During dinner, my dad slammed his fork down so hard it echoed across the dining room, rattling every plate like a warning shot. He looked me dead in the eyes and said, loud and clear, "You're the embarrassment we don't talk about." I felt the air in the room shift, the scrape of chairs stopping mid-motion, the chewing halting. And for once in my life, I didn't sit there and swallow it. I stood up, looked around at all their stunned faces, and said, "Then stop pretending I owe you anything." My voice didn't shake. His did. But before I tell you how it all exploded, let me take you back, because this dinner wasn't the beginning. It was just the first time I pushed back. My name's Tom, I'm 27, and for most of my life, I've been the quiet one in my family. Not the golden child. Not the rebel. Just the one who kept his head down, worked hard, didn't cause problems. I'm not some genius or prodigy. I didn't get into an Ivy or land $1 million startup deal by 20. But I was the one who paid my own way through college by working night shifts at a grocery store. The one who fixed the broken toilet when no one else would. The one who remembered everyone's birthdays even when they didn't remember mine. I grew up in a house where status mattered more than sincerity. My dad, Arthur, was a classic old-school guy, worked in construction management for 30 years, believed in earning your keep, but only if your path matched his definition of success. My mom, Karen, and yes, the name fits, didn't exactly work, but she played the role of social gatekeeper. Everything had to look perfect to the outside world. My older brother, Ryan, was the golden child from the moment he was born. Straight A's, varsity sports, got into a top-tier university with dad paying his full tuition. Meanwhile, I was the one who took the bus to community college and later transferred to a state school, where I got my accounting degree without a cent from them. My younger sister, Ashley, was the baby. She could do no wrong in their eyes, even when she crashed her third car or failed out of 2 different majors. I don't say this for sympathy. I just want to paint the picture right. Growing up, I didn't really feel like I was part of the same family unit. They made plans without me constantly. Family trips, birthdays, holidays. I'd find out afterward through photos on Facebook or a passing mention from a cousin. Once, they all went to Colorado for a ski trip. I was in college at the time, working double shifts over break to afford rent. When I asked about it later, Mom blinked at me and said, "Oh, we didn't think you'd want to come. You're always busy with work." Even after college, the distance didn't shrink. I got an entry-level job at a mid-sized accounting firm, started saving, moved into a tiny apartment. Nothing glamorous, but mine. Meanwhile, Ryan had his wedding fully paid for by my parents. I wasn't invited to the rehearsal dinner because they ran out of seats. Ashley got a new car for graduating cosmetology school. I didn't even get a card when I passed the CPA exam. Still, I showed up. I went to birthdays, Thanksgivings, Father's Day cookouts. I brought wine, gifts, a smile. I kept hoping, stupidly, that consistency would earn me some measure of respect. That if I just stayed the course, kept being reliable, maybe they'd finally see me. They didn't. One of the worst moments came last Christmas. My parents were hosting, and I brought this thoughtful gift basket for everyone. Artisan jams, wine, handmade cookies. I even got Ryan and his wife a spa gift card because I knew they'd been stressed with their second kid. As we opened presents, I got a pair of used Bluetooth headphones from Dad. I wish I was joking. There was literal earwax in one bud. When I looked confused, he said, "Well, you're always so into your frugal lifestyle. Thought you'd appreciate something practical." I didn't say anything. I laughed politely. I made a joke. I swallowed it like always. But the build-up really started a few months ago. I got a promotion at work, senior financial analyst. It came with a raise, a nicer office, and for the first time in my life, I felt proud. I wasn't flashy about it. I didn't go posting all over social media, but I did mention it when Mom asked what was new. Her response? "Oh, that's nice. Ryan just bought a boat. Have you seen the pictures?" "No, congratulations." "No, we're proud of you." Just another pivot back to the golden child. That's when something shifted in me. Not rage. Not even sadness. Just clarity. I realized I wasn't ever going to earn their love the way I thought I could. I had been playing their game with rules stacked against me from the start. Still, I didn't cut contact. I don't know why. Maybe I was scared of being alone. Maybe I still wanted some kind of validation. Either way, when Dad invited me to dinner a few weeks ago, I said yes. It was supposed to be a family catch-up. That's what Mom called it. Ryan, Ashley, their partners, even Ashley's new boyfriend, Some guy named Tyler who looked like he thought being a TikTok DJ was a real career. Everyone would be there. I was told to wear something nice, but not overdressed. I went with a clean button-down, slacks. Brought a bottle of decent wine. Spent the whole day wondering if this was finally the time things would feel normal. I should have known better. Dinner started off fake happy. Polite questions about work. Jokes that bordered on condescending. Ryan asked if I still did taxes for boring people. Ashley said she couldn't imagine working with spreadsheets all day. I smiled. I deflected. I focused on the food. For a while, it was manageable. Then dessert came out. Mom's lemon meringue pie. Everyone's favorite. Dad poured himself a brandy and stood up to make a toast. That's when the mood changed. He tapped his glass, cleared his throat, and said, "I just want to say how proud I am of this family. Ryan, great job with the new boat. Ashley, starting her new boutique, incredible. And even Tyler here, chasing his dreams, being bold." He didn't mention me at all. I stared at my plate, trying to breathe through it. But then Ryan, maybe drunk, maybe just cruel, laughed and said, "What about Tom? Isn't he still living in that one-bedroom apartment like a broke college kid?" Dad chuckled, swirled his brandy, and said, "Tom? Oh, he's the embarrassment we don't talk about." That's when the air shifted. Everyone laughed. Not hysterically, just those awkward, half-hearted laughs people do when they don't know how else to respond. Like it was just a joke. Just Dad being Dad. Except it wasn't a joke to me. I felt this slow heat rise up my neck. My fork dropped. The sound rang louder than I expected. And before I could think twice, I stood up. And I said, calmly, "Then stop pretending I owe you anything." The room fell dead silent. For a second, no one moved. I could hear the ice clink in Ryan's glass as he slowly set it down. Mom's eyes went wide like I had just dropped an F-bomb in church. Ashley let out this little gasp, more out of habit than actual shock, and Dad just stared at me with this blank expression that slowly twisted into a smirk. That smug little curve of the mouth he always did when he thought he was still in control. "What's that supposed to mean?" he asked, setting his glass down with a deliberate thunk. I didn't sit back down. "It means I'm tired of playing this game where I pretend I'm part of this family and you pretend I owe you respect for treating me like garbage." "Oh, please," Ashley cut in with a scoff. "Here we go again. You're always the victim." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You literally told your friends I was your cousin from out of state at your birthday party last year." "That was a joke," she snapped. "God, you're so sensitive." Ryan leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms like he was settling in for entertainment. "Man, Tom, you really know how to ruin a good night." "Yeah," I said, I still locked on Dad. Or maybe I just stopped letting it happen. Dad chuckled and shook his head like he was the adult in the room and I was throwing a tantrum. "Son, no one owes you anything. That's life. You're the one who made the choice to isolate yourself." I isolated myself. I repeated, louder than I meant to. "You left me out of the family photo at Ryan's wedding." Ryan waved a dismissive hand. "It was just immediate family." "I am immediate family," I shouted, the words burning my throat. And that's when Mom stood up. She always did that when she wanted to reassert control, like rising to her feet somehow made her more righteous. She smoothed the front of her blouse and looked at me like I was a child throwing food on the floor. "Tom, enough," she said, her voice low and cold. "This is not the time or the place for whatever this little tantrum is. If you have a problem with your life, that's on you." I stared at her. My life? My life is the only one at this table that I built on my own. "Don't get self-righteous," she snapped. "We've supported you." "When?" I demanded. "When you forgot my birthday 3 years in a row. When you accidentally left me off the family vacation list. Or when you told your friends I chose a small life because I didn't marry a trophy wife like Ryan." No one said anything. The silence was thick and suffocating. But the worst part? No one apologized. No one even looked guilty. That was the real breaking point. Because in that moment, I realized something that changed everything. They didn't forget me. They just didn't value me. And maybe they never did. I didn't storm out. I didn't throw a drink in anyone's face. I just turned around, walked to the foyer, grabbed my coat off the hook, and left. My car was parked 2 blocks down since Ryan had taken the last driveway spot with his giant SUV. I walked slowly, in the cold, without checking if anyone followed me. They didn't. Not one of them. Not even a text. The next morning, I woke up early, still angry, but strangely calm. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just felt done. Not broken. Not devastated. Just done. The switch had flipped, and there was no flipping it back. I made coffee, fed my cat, sat down at the small kitchen table in my apartment, and looked around at everything I'd built. My furniture wasn't fancy. My couch had a tear in the seam. My dining chairs were mismatched, one from a yard sale, two from IKEA. But it was mine. Every inch of it was earned. No handouts. No favors. No strings. And that thought, it didn't make me bitter. It made me proud. But I also realized something else. They would never see it that way. I was tired of hoping for a family that didn't exist. I started pulling back after that. I stopped answering group texts, though honestly, those were always 90% about Ryan's kids or Ashley's drama anyway. I stopped going to the weekly Sunday dinner invites. Stopped reaching out on birthdays or anniversaries. At first, no one noticed. But slowly, it began to dawn on them. A few weeks later, I got a call from Mom. I didn't pick up. Then a text. Tom, can you call me? Your father wants to talk. I left it on read. The next day, Ryan messaged me on Facebook. What's your deal lately? You ghosting the fam or something? I deleted the app. They didn't get it. They still thought they were the center of gravity. That I was orbiting them like a moon, waiting for scraps of light. But I wasn't. I was rebuilding my own solar system. And that's when the second betrayal hit. The one that sealed everything. I was on LinkedIn one morning, checking connections, when I saw Ryan had posted a job listing. It was at my company. My company. He had tagged the managing director, my boss, and thanked him for the opportunity to bring value to their team. I felt my stomach twist. I called the office immediately. My boss, Patrick, answered, cheerful as usual. Tom, hey. Actually, meant to reach out. Your brother applied for the new senior finance role. Put in a great word for you, by the way. I froze. I didn't know he was applying here. Patrick chuckled. Oh, he said he heard great things from you. I swallowed the rising bitterness. Did I miss the internal email about the opening? Patrick hesitated. It was sent last Friday. Didn't you get it? No, I didn't. Because I had taken Friday off for the first time in months. And apparently while I was out, Ryan had come in for an informal chat. That's when it clicked. He was angling for a job above me. And he'd used my name to get the foot in the door. I couldn't breathe for a second. I felt sick. This wasn't just family drama anymore. This was personal. This was strategic. They weren't just content dismissing me at holidays. They were now trying to infiltrate the one place I had carved out for myself. The one place where I wasn't the embarrassment. I went back and looked at the LinkedIn comments. My mother had commented, so proud of both my boys working together at last. Ryan has so much to offer this company. He's always been the sharpest one. The sharpest one. That phrase kept ringing in my ears like a bell. It wasn't just a slight. It was a direct shot at everything I had earned. Everything I had bled for. That's when I knew. This wasn't just about walking away from them. This was about setting boundaries they couldn't ignore. It was about making it clear I wasn't their pawn. Not anymore. I drafted an email to Patrick that night. Calm. Professional. Detailed. I explained, respectfully, that while I supported my brother's pursuit of new opportunities, I had not recommended him nor endorsed his application. I included timestamps of past interactions, noted potential conflicts of interest, and mentioned the complications of working in a direct reporting structure with family, especially with our strained history. Patrick responded the next day. He thanked me for the transparency. And then he said something that told me everything I needed to know. We value your work here more than you know, Tom. We won't move forward with anything that compromises team trust. Thanks again for flagging this. Ryan's application was withdrawn a few days later. No explanation given. But I knew. I had stopped it. I had protected my space. And that might have been the end of it. Except that's when the final twist came. 1 week later, I got an invite to another family dinner. Same location. Same crowd. Same time. Except this time, the message said, family discussion. Attendance expected. No excuses. I stared at the message for a long time. Attendance expected. No excuses. It didn't feel like an invitation. It felt like a summons. I remember pacing my apartment that night, trying to make sense of why they wanted me there. I knew it wasn't an apology. That much was clear. My family didn't do apologies. They did cover-ups, blame shifting, and pretending nothing happened. So why now? Why after everything? After Dad's toast, Ryan's attempted corporate backstab, The silence that followed when I walked out? I almost didn't go. But some part of me needed closure. Not the kind that came from them, but the kind I could give myself. I was done playing the role of the loyal, overlooked son. I wasn't going there to make peace. I was going there to confirm, once and for all, what I already suspected, that this wasn't my family. Not really. And maybe it never had been. So I went. I didn't dress up this time. I wore jeans and a plain t-shirt. No wine, no gifts, no effort. Just me. Raw. Done pretending. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw Ryan's new boat parked across the lawn like a monument to his success. Ashley's shiny new SUV sat crooked in its spot, her vanity plate reading Boss Lady. The sight of it made me laugh out loud, not because it was funny, but because it was so perfectly on brand. I sat in my car for a minute, watching the warm glow of the windows. From the outside, it looked like a perfect home, but I knew better. When I walked in, no one greeted me. They were all already seated at the dining table, same long oak monstrosity that had been in the house since I was a kid. The tension was thick, like they'd already started arguing before I arrived. "Tom," my mother said, not even glancing up. "You're late." I checked my watch. I was 2 minutes early. Dad cleared his throat and gestured for me to sit. Ryan sat at the head of the table, hands clasped like he was running a board meeting. Ashley was on her phone. Her boyfriend, Tyler, looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. The only empty seat was directly across from Dad, of course. I sat, folded my hands, waited. Ryan spoke first. "So, we wanted to talk about what happened and how your behavior has affected the family dynamic." "My behavior?" I blinked. "My behavior?" Ashley rolled her eyes dramatically. "Tom, you blew up at Dad in front of everyone. That was way out of line. Like, beyond disrespectful." "Yeah," Ryan added. "I mean, we've all got stuff going on, but we don't make scenes at family dinners." I let out a breath and looked around the table. "So this is an intervention?" "No," Mom said quickly. "This is a conversation. A chance for you to reflect and, hopefully, come back into the fold. We're still a family, Tom." I stared at her. "You didn't call or text me for 2 months." "We were giving you space," she replied, as if that was a generous act. Dad finally spoke. "Look, you're almost 30. It's time to grow up and stop acting like the world owes you something." And that's when I snapped. Not in a loud, dramatic way, but quietly, deeply. "You know what?" I said. "You're right. The world doesn't owe me anything. But neither do you. And I don't owe you my time, my silence, or my forgiveness." Ryan laughed under his breath. "Forgiveness for what?" "For treating you like an adult." I turned to him. "You tried to take my job." He shrugged. "It was just business. You act like I stole something." "You did steal something," I said. "My trust." The room went still. Dad folded his arms. "This isn't about business. It's about loyalty. About family. And frankly, you've been acting like an outsider for years." That's when it landed. The words I'd been circling around for months. The truth I hadn't wanted to admit. "I am an outsider," I said quietly. "You made sure of that." And with that, I stood up. "I'm done." Mom stood too. "Tom, wait. Please. Just stay. We can work through this." "No," I said. "You don't want to work through anything. You want me to come back and play the same part I've always played. The quiet one. The obedient one. The one who sits there while you all talk over me, take from me, and act like I don't exist." They didn't stop me when I left. No one chased after me. No one called the next day. It was over. And for a while, I thought I had made peace with that. But I hadn't. Because what came next was the hardest part. The silence. The holidays came and went. No invite. No check-in. No gifts. I spent Thanksgiving watching reruns on Netflix and eating a microwave dinner. I spent Christmas alone in my apartment, staring at the blinking lights of the tiny fake tree I'd bought on sale. I'd never felt so hollow. It wasn't just the absence of people. It was the absence of meaning. For so long, my identity had been tied to that family. Even in dysfunction, they were my anchor. And now, drifting alone, I didn't know who I was. Work became a blur. I started making mistakes. Nothing huge, but enough that Patrick pulled me aside one afternoon and asked if everything was okay. I lied. Said I was just tired. But the truth was, I was unraveling. I started having trouble sleeping. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. with this tightness in my chest, like I'd forgotten something important. I stopped cooking. I stopped calling friends. I stopped caring. I hit rock bottom one night when I found myself sitting in the dark at my kitchen table, holding a glass of whiskey I hadn't even tasted. The silence was crushing. I opened my phone, hovered over my mother's number, and then put it down. No, I couldn't go back. Not again. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I went for a walk. No destination, just movement. I ended up at a bookstore I used to visit in college. This tiny, dusty place run by an old man named Victor, who always smelled like pipe tobacco and wore tweed jackets year-round. I wandered the aisles aimlessly until I stumbled across a copy of The Road to Character by David Brooks. I bought it on impulse. That book became the spark, not because it fixed me, but because it reminded me that self-worth doesn't come from other people. It comes from within, from choosing values over validation, from living with quiet integrity, even when no one's watching. I started rebuilding from there. I made a list of things I wanted to do, not for anyone else, but for me. I started meal prepping again. I signed up for a volunteer tax prep program for low-income families. I reached out to a couple of old friends I'd drifted from and asked if they wanted to grab coffee. One of them, a guy named Mark from my accounting classes, was now a financial literacy coach. We got to talking, and he invited me to speak at one of his free weekend workshops. I was nervous, but I said yes. Standing in front of that small group of people, explaining how to build a budget, how to save for retirement, how to avoid predatory loans, something clicked. They listened. They asked questions. They thanked me afterward. It was the first time in a long time I felt useful, respected, seen. And that feeling? It was addictive. Over the next few months, I kept speaking. More workshops, more connections. I even started a little side project, a YouTube channel where I explained basic personal finance concepts in plain English. Nothing fancy, just a camera, a whiteboard, and me. And it took off. Slowly at first, 100 views here, 500 there. But then one video about student loan forgiveness went semi-viral. Suddenly, I had 10,000 subscribers. Emails started pouring in, people thanking me, asking for help, sharing their stories. It felt real. And then, one day, Patrick called me into his office. He closed the door, smiled, and slid a folder across the desk. "Promotion," he said. "We want you to lead our new community outreach division. You've earned it." I opened the folder and stared at the offer letter. A six-figure salary, leadership, a team of my own. I didn't cry, but I felt it in my chest, this deep, quiet relief. I had done it. Without them, without their approval, without their money, without their help. I had built something meaningful. And that night, sitting alone in my apartment, I realized something else. They didn't break me. They freed me. But just when I thought the story was over, just when I started to feel truly whole again, something happened. Something that dragged me right back into their world. A letter. Handwritten. No return address. Just my name, scrawled in my mother's familiar handwriting. I almost threw it out. But curiosity got the better of me. I opened it. The envelope was cream-colored, thick, and elegant, the kind reserved for wedding invitations or holiday cards. The handwriting on the front was unmistakable. My mother always wrote with this perfect cursive that looked straight out of a 1950s etiquette manual. It was strange seeing it again, especially after everything. I hesitated before opening it, just holding it in my hands for a moment, as if it might burst into flames or vanish if I blinked. Inside was a single folded piece of stationery. No "Dear Tom." No "Love, Mom." Just a few carefully written lines. "There's something you need to know. It concerns the house and your father's plans. If you care about what's right, you'll come to the meeting on Sunday. Noon. No address. No signature. Just that." I flipped the envelope over. Nothing else inside. No clue where this meeting was supposed to be held. I assumed it meant their house, the same place where all of this began, but part of me wondered if it was a trap. Maybe they wanted to bait me into another family ambush. Maybe this was their way of reasserting control after losing their grip. But there was one word that stuck in my brain like a splinter: house. I hadn't thought much about it lately, but I remembered my parents had refinanced a few years ago. Dad always liked to brag about his equity and how the market was exploding. He once told me, over beers at a barbecue, that the house would stay in the family, that it was a legacy. But coming from him, those words never meant much. Ryan was always the one they saw as the heir, not me. Still, the wording in that note felt different. Almost scared. "And your father's plans?" That wasn't a phrase my mother would use lightly. I sat on the couch and stared at the letter, the corners of the paper curling slightly in my palm. Part of me wanted to crumple it up and throw it in the trash. Walk away for good. But another part, the accountant in me, maybe, wanted to know exactly what those plans were. So I decided to show up. But this time, I wasn't walking in unprepared. The first thing I did was call Lisa. She was a former co-worker of mine, an attorney who used to work in corporate law before shifting into estate planning. We'd stayed in touch over the years, occasionally grabbing lunch or chatting about side hustles. I trusted her. More importantly, I trusted her to tell me the truth without sugarcoating it. When I explained the situation, she didn't hesitate. "Tom," she said, "if your dad's making moves with property or inheritance, and he's excluding you, he may be laying legal groundwork to lock you out permanently." I felt a chill creep into my stomach. "Is that possible?" "Absolutely," she said, "especially if the deed's only in his name, or if he set up a trust and named Ryan as the sole beneficiary. Or, worst case, if he's gifting it away quietly while he's still alive. Wouldn't he need to tell me if that affects me? Legally? Not if you're not on the deed. Morally? That's another conversation." She offered to look into public records for me, and within 24 hours, she had answers. "Tom," she said the next day, her tone serious, "your parents transferred the house into a living trust last year. Ryan's listed as the successor trustee." I blinked. Meaning? Meaning the house skips probate and goes straight to him when they pass. Or if your dad becomes incapacitated. But here's the twist. The trust was amended 2 months ago. That caught my attention. Amended how? Your dad added a clause. It gives Ryan full authority to liquidate the property before their death if he believes it's in the best interest of the family. I was speechless. So he can sell it. Anytime. Without telling anyone. If he gets your mom to sign off, and she's listed as co-trustee, then yes. My blood turned cold. That house wasn't just a piece of real estate. It was the only thing in our family with any actual value. My grandfather had built it with his own hands after returning from the war. He laid every brick, sanded every beam. It was meant to stay in the family. But of course, in their version of family, I wasn't included. Lisa continued, "If I had to guess, your father's getting ready to sell it. And he's probably planning to hand the money straight to Ryan. Or use it to invest in one of his businesses. And I get nothing. That's what it looks like." I hung up the call and just sat there in silence for a while. The betrayal stung more than I expected. Not because I needed the house. Not even because I wanted money from them. But because it confirmed everything I'd feared. They were erasing me. On paper. In legacy. In name. I didn't sleep much that week. My thoughts kept circling around the same dark loop. How long had they been planning this? Did my mother write that note out of guilt? Did she even realize what she was signing? By the time Sunday came, I was ready, not just emotionally, but strategically. I wasn't walking into that house to plead. I was walking in to gather information, to listen, to record, and to prepare. Because if they thought I was just going to roll over and let them cut me out, they clearly hadn't been paying attention these past few months. When I arrived, the vibe was different from any other family meeting we'd had before. The dining room was quiet. No food, no wine, just papers spread out across the table and Dad pacing in the corner, phone in hand. Ryan was already seated, laptop open, talking to someone via Zoom with a muted mic. Ashley wasn't there, and neither was Tyler. Mom was in the kitchen, her arms crossed, staring out the window like she couldn't bear to watch. The moment I walked in, Ryan looked up and smiled. Fake, polished, corporate. "Hey bro," he said. "Glad you could make it. We were just going over some numbers." Dad hung up the phone and nodded at me. "Sit." I didn't move. "I'll stand." He raised an eyebrow but didn't push. "We're putting the house on the market," he said bluntly. "No build-up. No sugarcoating. Just the knife, straight to the gut." "Why?" "Because it's time," he said. "The upkeep's too much. We're getting older. We're moving into a condo near the marina. And Ryan's the one selling it. He has the connections," Dad said. "He's managing the process." I turned to Mom. "Is that what you want?" She didn't answer. Her mouth opened slightly, but nothing came out. I could see the conflict in her eyes. She had signed the documents, but she hadn't agreed in her heart. That was all I needed to know. I pulled out my phone and placed it on the table, screen facing up. "Recording. Then you won't mind repeating that," I said. "On record." Dad's face darkened. "What is this, a sting operation?" "No," I said. "It's documentation. For when this turns into a legal dispute. Ryan stood up, suddenly defensive. There's no dispute. You're not on the trust. This isn't your property. I know, I said, keeping my voice calm. But if there was coercion? If our mother didn't understand what she signed? If there's undue influence? Mom flinched. I'm not threatening you, I added. I'm just reminding you that inheritance law isn't as airtight as you think. Dad stepped forward. You're bluffing. I smiled. Try me. There was a long silence. Ryan closed his laptop. Dad grabbed the papers and stuffed them back into a manila folder. You've made your point, he said. No, I said. You've made yours. I'm not family. Not to you. But you don't get to erase me quietly. I walked out without another word. But that wasn't the end. Because that night, I made a plan. A real one. I called Lisa back and gave her every detail. I began digging into the trust documents, every clause, every amendment. I spoke with a colleague who specialized in elder care law. And most importantly, I found the one thing Ryan didn't count on. Leverage. Because 3 years ago, I helped Dad file some of his business taxes as a favor. And I remembered something then that he probably hoped I'd forgotten. A loan he took out from the company to pay for Ashley's car. That he never reported. On paper, it looked like embezzlement. I waited 3 weeks before I made my move. Not because I was stalling. Not because I was unsure. Because I wanted it done right. Every night after work, I went through old email threads, scanned documents, and backed up every piece of evidence I could find. The loan, the company account it came from, the reimbursement form he never filed. It was all there. I remembered now that Dad had panicked when he couldn't get the bank to approve Ashley's car loan and asked me to smooth it over, using a little creative accounting. I hadn't known better back then. I was a second-year associate with no formal authority, just trying to be helpful. But the $24,000 withdrawal stood out like a sore thumb. There was no official board approval. No contract. Nothing. He used company funds for personal expenses and never reported it. Tax fraud. Clear as day. And I had just become the one person who could prove it. Lisa was careful when I brought it to her. She reviewed everything 3 times. Verified the transaction chain. Confirmed the absence of board documentation. Then, she looked me in the eye and said, "You have them cornered. But you have to decide, are you using this to get justice, or just to get even?" I thought about that for a long time. And then I told her, I want to protect what's mine. And I want them to feel what it's like to lose something they thought they were entitled to. The first step was contacting the small CPA firm Dad still used for his contracting business. I posed as a former employee seeking information for a compliance audit, and within 2 days, I confirmed the most important detail. The embezzled amount had not been amended in any of the firm's past tax filings. Strike 1. The second step was reaching out to the company's other listed partner, a guy named Vince, Dad's old drinking buddy turned silent investor. Vince had never liked me much growing up, but he hated surprises more. So I scheduled a coffee meeting and walked him through everything. When I showed him the missing transaction and the timeline of Ashley's car purchase, he went pale. This could get us shut down, he muttered. I nodded. Which is why I'm coming to you first. I'm not trying to burn it all down. I just want them to stop. I want out of the trust. I want a formal legal statement removing my name from any family obligations. I want it in writing that I owe them nothing. And I want the property sale frozen until I can make sure my mother signed everything of her own will. He looked at me like I had grown 2 heads. You're blackmailing your own father? No, I said calmly. I'm protecting myself. After years of being the backup plan. The punchline. The one they thought would never fight back. Vince didn't say yes. He didn't say no. But 2 days later, I got a call from my dad. His voice was calm. Too calm. Tom, we need to talk. I agreed. We met at a neutral spot, a quiet diner halfway between our homes. He wore a golf shirt and sunglasses, like he thought he could blend in, hide the tension behind a casual outfit. He got straight to the point. I heard you've been digging. I stirred my coffee. I have. You talked to Vince. I did. He sat back. You know that was a long time ago. You were part of that transaction too. No, I said. I processed the paperwork under your direction. I never signed anything. I never benefited from it. But you did. He drummed his fingers on the table. So what now? You want me to pay you off? I looked him in the eye. I want 3 things. He didn't interrupt. He just waited. First, I want a signed legal release absolving me of all obligations to the family trust. I don't want my name listed anywhere. I don't want to be mentioned in your estate planning documents. Nothing. He nodded slowly. Done. Second, I want the house sale paused until Mom confirms, in front of a lawyer, that she signed the amendments willingly and understands what they mean. He blinked. That one hit a nerve. And third, I continued, I want you to step down from your company. Make Vince the full managing partner. Remove yourself from operations. He leaned forward. You can't be serious. I'm dead serious, I said. Because if you don't, I walk everything, the loan, the timeline, the statements, into the IRS office downtown. I have a meeting scheduled for Friday. Your choice. He didn't speak for a long time. Eventually, he looked out the window and muttered, You were always smarter than you let on. I smiled. No, you just never paid attention. It took a week to iron everything out. Vince pushed the paperwork through. Lisa reviewed every line of the release and the trust withdrawal. Mom was brought in to meet with an independent estate attorney. She looked older than I remembered, tired, worn down. But when she saw me, something flickered behind her eyes. Regret, maybe. Maybe something softer. She signed the confirmation willingly. Said she had felt pressured but didn't want to rock the boat. I didn't blame her. She'd been surviving Dad's shadow for decades. When it was all done, I walked out of the law office with a manila envelope in hand and an unshakable sense of peace. I wasn't rich. I didn't get a payout. I didn't inherit the house or expose Dad on national television. But I had taken back something far more valuable. Control. The fallout came quickly. Dad stepped down from his company the next month. Vince took over and quietly reshuffled the books. I heard from a former co-worker that Ryan was furious. He had been banking on that house sale to fund a real estate investment and had already sunk money into a failed Airbnb flip. With the sale paused and Mom now refusing to sign off on anything without legal counsel, his little plan crumbled. Ashley. She reached out once. Sent me a short message that read, You didn't have to go that far. I left it on read. As for my mother, she called me one Sunday afternoon in April. Just called. I almost didn't answer. But I did. Tom, she said quietly, I just wanted you to know. I saw what you did. You didn't have to protect me. But you did. There was a pause. And I'm sorry. That was the first apology I ever got from her. And it was enough. Today, I live in a small 2-bedroom townhome across the city. Nothing fancy. But it's mine. Fully paid off. No ties to anyone else. My YouTube channel just passed 100K subscribers. I started consulting part-time with nonprofits, helping low-income families navigate debt and budgeting. People ask me why I don't go full-time with content. I always tell them the same thing. Because the real work happens off camera. It happens when you walk away from people who've hurt you and don't look back. When you stop explaining yourself to people who will never listen. When you rebuild not out of spite, but out of quiet defiance. My father taught me a lot, just not the lessons he meant to. And if you're wondering what the last words I ever said to him were, it was at a brief, awkward, family mediation session Lisa arranged just to close everything out. He tried to offer me a handshake. I didn't take it. I looked him in the eye and said, You taught me the value of building things for yourself. Because no one else will do it for you. And no one can take it away when it's yours. Then I walked out. And I've never looked back.